Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Pitstick. Welcome to video number 1 of the introduction for the course Greater Reality Living, 5 Keys to Knowing and Showing the Great News, Creating the Life You Have Envisioned, Sharing Your Greatest Gifts, and Making Our World a Better Place. Now, admittedly, that may be the world's longest subtitle. However, hearing it repeatedly will help you enjoy the main goals of this course, which include, first of all, knowing and showing the great news, and you'll learn much more about the great news. Very important things to know while on Earth, like no one really dies. You do see your loved ones again after they pass on. We each are integral parts of Creator. We're here for special reasons. So it's all great news, and this is based on evidence, by the way, scientific, clinical, experiential evidence about the way life is set up. Another way to put that is about the nature of reality, about the big picture of life. The next part of the subtitle, Creating and Enjoying the Life You Have Envisioned. And you, if you see it written, is all caps, because I'm referring to your higher self, your real self, the totality of your energy, your soul, if you want, not just your earthly body and brain. So that's important to make that distinction, because what your soul wants, what your higher self wants, may be quite different and may not be that pleasant. For example, most humans, let's face it, we want things to be safe, pleasant, easy, but souls care for none of that, because they want adventure, they want growth, they want to learn and serve others. So it's important to remember we're talking about what your real self has envisioned. The next part is sharing your greatest gifts. We all have what Native Americans call giveaways, special abilities and talents that when we share them make such a difference in life. And by the way, when we do that, that serves and blesses ourselves and others. Next, making the world a better place, and learning information and resources to do all that. In the face of it, that may seem impossible to remember who you are, create the greatest life of your dreams, share your greatest gifts, make the world a better place. It's like, what? That's impossible. Well, actually, it's not. It's most likely why you volunteered to come here at this time. And it's such a important task, and we hope you'll get this and join the team to make this happen. So it's an honor to share this information. It took me 50 years to put all this together. I wish when I was 21 someone would have shared it with me, but now at least I can do this for others, for many others around the world. So I hope you consider this to be a personal conversation, as if you and I are sitting talking over a cup of tea, and I hope you use this information and share it with others. Now, I won't strive, this is going to end up to be a lot of hours, because it's a lot for people to understand and share all the resources and so on. So I'm not going to strive for perfection in these videos. I may clear my throat, may make a mistake and redo it. I'm going to present it with my heart and head, but not strive for technical excellence, which would really hurt the soulfulness of this presentation. Now, I'll be mentioning some articles and website pages, and those are all listed in the PDF that accompanies this course, which is called Resources for Greater Reality Living course. So you can write them down if you want, but there's access to all those. Now, I may say we sometimes, and the other, well, I guess two main other parts of we. First of all, Dr. Gary Schwartz, PhD, former Harvard and Yale professor, now professor emeritus at the University of Arizona. We wrote the book Greater Rowdy Living together. And also my fiance, my dearest life friend, Andrea Lee, who's an RN, a doctor of acupuncture, a yoga teacher, evidential medium. I mean, she's amazing. She does it all. But so yeah, I want to say that's my main team. And then I have layers and layers of dear friends, family, collaborators. So I'm thankful for all of them and all that they do to help me do this. To help you understand why you should spend your precious time in learning this and putting it to use, I'd like to just briefly share bios for myself and Dr. Schwartz to help you understand the depth and breadth of our training and our experience. For myself, and I'll share more personal things later, my undergraduate degree was in pre-professional, pre-med. I worked as a respiratory therapist part-time for 6 years in 2 different hospitals and was around many people as they died, many suffering people, including little children. I attended theology school and took all of the biblical history and pastoral counseling training they had. I earned a master's degree in clinical psychology and then a doctor of chiropractic degree so I could practice holistic health care, tending to body, mind, spirit needs. I've written 8 books. I've created 10 audio programs that help people in their home have past life regressions and get in touch with their soul's wisdom, pre-birth planning, etc. I've hosted 2 radio shows. I've lectured to hundreds and hundreds of people, of groups, thousands and thousands of people over the years. So anyway, and much more. So you can learn more about me at my website, soulproof.com/about. For Dr. Schwartz, I should note he had 2 near-death experiences when he was a child, and I considered that opened his control valve a bit, so he experienced more of reality than the average person. A true genius, undergrad at Cornell, master's in clinical psychology from Harvard, PhD in psychophysiology from Harvard. As I mentioned, Harvard professor, Yale professor, tenured professor, where he was one of a handful of people who pioneered the field of behavioral medicine. And like your mind can control your blood pressure and pulse and so on in the 1970s. Also did pioneering work in energy healing, and about 25 years ago went to the University of Arizona to research the question of survival of consciousness. That is, does life really continue after bodily death, or is that just wishful thinking? And I'll share more as we go about that. So he and I have been working closely together since 2016 on the Soul Phone Project. Together, we provide a great mix of science and clinical approaches. Now, I should note that he didn't review this course. He's in the weeds with research and development, data analysis for the Soul Phone Project, which I discuss at length in topic number 9 of this course. But for now, I will talk briefly about it a bit. So he's a strict scientist. Everything that I present is based on scientific, clinical, and or experiential evidence. And experiential evidence means based on firsthand experiences. So I make every effort to make sure that what I say is evidence-based. Now I'm going to discuss or use some different terms, some of which Dr. Schwartz and I designed, and I want to share what those are so you understand what they mean, the accurate meaning, because this area of understanding the nature of reality, that is, the big picture of life, understanding the greater reality, all that exists, and then functioning, knowing that, being a more awakened human, and creating the greatest life your dreams, that requires accurate terms. And because so much of the information, quote, information that people base their beliefs on about how to live, what is the meaning of life, what happens after you die, and so on, is based on archaic and sometimes erroneous teachings dating to the Dark Ages and even millennia before. So some of those are fear-based. They're just not based on any evidence. So now we live in a new time where we have lots of contemporary information to share, and it's all good news, but we need accurate language for that. So the first term is greater reality, which you heard, and that is our preferred term for the totality of existence, for all that is, okay, the greater reality. That's the cosmos, but that's also formed and formless dimensions, from the micro to the macro, people, plants, animals, planets, galaxies, universes, etc. Greater reality living is our term that invites people to consider, if you really knew how life was set up and that you're an integral, infinite, beloved part of all that, how would you live? How would you treat yourself, others, and make our world a better place? So we don't have a prescribed path for that. We have recommendations, but we understand everyone's different and everyone has their own path. So greater reality living. How would you live if you had a greater understanding about how life is set up? Post-material persons is our term for those people who used to live on Earth. Their physical body died, and now they're in a different realm, dimension of wavelength, vibrational frequency. It turns out that the brain, as amazing as it is, perceives much less than 1% of reality. So most people think they're this physical body that ages and dies, but it turns out we're much more than that. Well, these post-material persons, PMPs for short, are the everything else. 99.9% of who and what we are survives bodily death, and so that's really important to know and remember. We use the term material person then as a contrast for post-material persons. In other words, if you're listening to this, you're living on Earth full time, you're a material person, or, well, MP for short in our acronyms. And we use that because so many of the other terms aren't accurate. You can say human. Well, post-material persons are human in very meaningful ways. You could say a physical person. Well, they have physicality, or can have, depending on what their desires are or their level of interaction. So we went through all this, and that's why it's so much easier to say post-material persons, material persons. Then I'll talk about the brain-based consciousness, which is your consciousness, your beliefs, your understandings, your level of perception based on what the brain and your nervous system picks up, detects. But then there's also your transcendent source of consciousness. And the acronyms for these: brain-based consciousness, BBC, transcendent source of consciousness, TSC. Again, I know this is a lot of new information, but it's so important to help you understand about the nature of reality and how can you best have an earthly experience, do what you came here to do, and sharing this with other people, your loved ones. So I hope you'll consider it's worth learning a bit of a foreign language here. Transcendent source of consciousness then is that awareness that is you, really, that existed before you were born on Earth and continues after this earthly body dies. I've used the term consciousness, energy, life force. I use those the most instead of soul. I know the soul's well used. I mean, we call it the Soul Phone Project. My first book is Soul Proof. However, that's kind of a religious term, which some people don't appreciate. Also, it has some downsides, like people consider the soul to be airy and gauzy, insubstantial, and what I'm talking about, manifestations of consciousness, energy, life force, can be just as solid as the most solid object you perceive on Earth. Keep in mind that what, again, our eyes and brain think is happening really is a delusion. We look solid at each other and the table's solid and so on, but actually it's some electrons spinning around with mainly space in between. Again, all information to help you understand everything we're going to be sharing here. I'll use the term multilocation synonymously with simultaneous realities, and that captures the very real possibility that your energy, your consciousness can manifest in more than one time-space dimension at the same time. People like Michael Newton, PhD, founder of Life Between Lives therapy, found that based upon his research, the average earthling brings about 40% of the totality of their energy to manifest into this earthly experience. So that's also very important. We'll refer to, again, multilocation, simultaneous realities. I will say earthly experience a lot versus this life. People say, he died, his life was over, this life was over, and he died. Well, that language is just so misleading. And so, people whose body have died are just as alive as we, in some ways, much more so, because they don't have the limited filtering of the human brain. So I call this the earthly experience, not this life, because it's all life. Life is eternal. Life is all there is. So that's why on that, I'll try to use quotation marks with words like loss, death, dying, again, because they're all so inaccurate, since no one really dies. We can't really lose loved ones, people or pets, for example. I will use terms like pass on, change worlds, transition, drop the body, all much more wonderful terms to describe what happens when this earthly form perishes. Also, I use terms that are more cumbersome but much more accurate, using modifiers. For example, his body died, or her earthly form ended. Again, sound a little awkward in the beginning, but so important to remind you that your loved ones don't really die, and neither you, just the body. Now, to learn definitions of other terms, see my article number 116 at soulproof.com, which is entitled Terms for Optimally Living on Earth and Beyond. Dr. Schwartz and I also have a glossary in our book, and one of the appendices with terms for greater reality living. Now, I don't consider this course to be the only path, the only approach, but it is very comprehensive, practical. It's helped many people in powerful ways over the years. Now, my views will have changed and probably will continue to shift as I learn and experience more. But what you're learning here, I'm recording this in July 2024, represents my greatest understanding about the nature of reality, how you can best have a wonderful earthly experience. I will try to use some humor at times, and one reason is to lighten this up, because you understand fear of death is the number one fear. maybe public speaking up there as well for some people. So it's important to poke fun at things like dying and laugh about it, because it doesn't even really exist. All of our fears are needless. The French philosopher and mathematician Voltaire said, God is like a comedian playing to an audience that's too afraid to laugh. And really, when you understand what's going on, when you see things more clearly, you can laugh at everything, including when this body starts to die, because it's such a insignificant part of who you are. It's kind of like a sweater you wore in 4th grade. And if you're middle-aged or older, you probably don't even remember that sweater. Well, that's about how important this earthly body is. And yet, if you haven't been exposed to facts and teachings like this, you may be suffering as you see it age or die, or that of loved ones. So I don't know if you've been around any wise people, yogis and so on. I've studied with several over the years. They giggle a lot. They laugh. I mean, they just think things are so funny, and indeed it is. That's enough for now. I want to keep these videos fairly short, so stay tuned for video number 2 on the introduction for this course. Let it shine. This is the end of topic number 1, the introduction for the course, Greater Reality Living, 5 Keys to Knowing and Showing the Great News, Creating the Life You Have Envisioned, Sharing Your Greatest Gifts, and Making Our World a Better Place. Let it shine.